All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the literally unbelievable, totally bizarre life of John McAfee. Now, for most of us, hearing the name McAfee just brings to mind that everyday, somewhat annoying antivirus update popping up on our laptops. But as our source material makes incredibly clear, the mundane reality of that software is completely wild when you compare it to the absolutely unhinged, chaotic reality of the guy who actually created it. So, who actually was the real John McAfee? To figure that out, we're going to peel back the layers of his life chronologically. And look, I have to warn you right up front. As our source material perfectly notes, the deeper down this rabbit hole we go, the crazier things are going to get. Section 1. Rise of a Tech Mogul. Before that famous antivirus software was even a glimmer in his eye, McAfee had an incredibly impressive resume. We're talking working as a programmer for NASA's Apollo program, followed by prestigious jobs at massive tech giants like Lockheed and Xerox. But behind the scenes, well, he was heavily addicted to drugs. He was known to casually drop LSD on his morning commutes. At one job, he actually took a full bag of the psychedelic drug DMT right at his desk, hallucinated so badly that he completely forgot what his job even was, and famously ran off to hide behind a trash can. But here's the crazy part. Despite this total personal spiral, he still had these flashes of absolute pure tech brilliance. When the very first major computer viruses started making the news, McAfee sat down and wrote his famous antivirus code in just a day and a half. But he quickly figured out that to actually sell the thing, he needed people to be afraid. So he zeroes in on this looming threat called the Michelangelo virus, and he starts using some brilliant but highly manipulative fear-mongering tactics to push his new software to the public. And man, does this ever illustrate the sheer power of media manipulation. He goes on national television claiming that up to 5 million computers are going to be completely destroyed when this Michelangelo virus wakes up on March 6th. Naturally, this causes a massive, widespread public panic. But the reality? When March 6th finally rolled around, only a tiny fraction of that number, like between 10,000 and 20,000 computers, were ever actually affected. Honestly, though, the reality didn't even matter because his fear tactics worked like a total charm. Sales absolutely skyrocketed, and McAfee Associates locked down an astounding 67% of the entire antivirus market. He was pulling in millions with this tiny workforce of just 20 cult-like employees who literally slept at their desks. Less than 2 years after taking the company public, he cashes out his shares and walks away with $100 million. Section 2. Paranoia in Paradise. Now, you'd probably think getting suddenly insanely wealthy would bring you some peace of mind, right? Well, not for McAfee. It actually just kicked his escalating paranoia into overdrive. He takes up this incredibly dangerous hobby he called aerotrekking, which is basically flying ultralight aircraft super low over the desert. Tragically, a crash ended up killing a passenger and his own 22-year-old nephew, sparking a $5 million wrongful death lawsuit. Instead of just paying it, which, remember, he could easily afford, McAfee literally invites news crews to watch him auction off his assets, fakes losing his entire fortune to dodge paying the grieving family, and completely bolts to Belize to escape U.S. jurisdiction. He truly believed his money could buy him whatever reality he wanted down there. Once he sets up shop in Belize, the paranoia just goes completely off the charts. He didn't settle into some quiet, relaxing beach retirement. No, he essentially built himself a private army. As he openly admitted in this quote, he explicitly hired armed criminals to act as his personal bodyguards. He started buying weapons for the local police, enforced a totally unauthorized 8 p.m. curfew on the local town, and let his incredibly aggressive guard dogs just freely roam the public beaches, terrifying absolutely everyone. Then, things take a genuinely dark turn. He convinces a Harvard microbiologist named Alison Adano to move down to Belize to help him create plant-based antibiotics. But she eventually fled, bringing terrifying allegations back to U.S. authorities that McAfee had drugged and assaulted her. On top of all that, his jungle laboratory gets raided by Belizean authorities on suspicion that he's actually running a meth lab. Now, just to be completely impartial here, it's important to note that McAfee firmly denied every single one of these allegations, and no official charges were ever filed regarding the lab or the assault. Section 3. The Neighbor's Murder. So you take this increasingly militant, deeply unstable, and heavily armed environment, and it naturally sets the stage for the absolute most infamous event in his entire life. His American neighbor, Greg Fall, had been repeatedly complaining about McAfee's vicious dogs attacking people. Fall eventually threatens to just poison the dogs himself. Well, shortly after, McAfee's dogs are indeed poisoned. And the exact next day, Greg Fall is found dead in his home with a gunshot wound to the head. McAfee immediately becomes the prime suspect, and rather than just talking to the police, he instantly goes on the run. Trying to sort out the allegations around this murder is like navigating a complete maze of contradictory information. Take the massive 2016 Showtime documentary Gringo, for example. It featured multiple former employees going on camera, openly claiming that McAfee explicitly paid thousands of dollars for hitmen to eliminate his enemies. But wait, it gets so much weirder. Those exact same employees later pop up on McAfee's own YouTube channel claiming the exact opposite. They said Showtime actually paid them to lie for the documentary, and that John was 100% innocent. So we're basically left as observers with entirely unreliable sources across the board and zero definitive answers on what actually happened.
Section 4. Running with the Devil.
So now McAfee is insisting to anyone who will listen that the Belizean government is actually trying to assassinate him because he supposedly hacked their servers. His grand international escape attempt is just pure absurd chaos. He disguises himself, sneaks over the border into Guatemala, and then does something incredibly bizarre for a guy on the run. He invites 2 reporters from Vice News to tag along. And in the most ironic twist possible for a literal cybersecurity pioneer, his top-secret hiding spot gets totally blown because those Vice reporters accidentally published a photo of him online that still contained all of his exact GPS coordinates. You can't make this stuff up. So authorities, including Interpol, swiftly surround him. They are fully planning to deport him straight back to Belize to answer for the murder. But his lawyer realizes they just need to stall until 3 p.m. to file a legal appeal. What does McAfee do? He literally fakes a massive heart attack on the spot. He gets rushed to the hospital, and the delay works absolutely flawlessly. The appeal goes through, and instead of heading back to Belize, he gets deported to the United States and touches down in Miami as a completely free man.
Section 5. A legacy of chaos. Escaping Belize, however, definitely did not mean John McAfee was settling down for a quiet retirement back in the States. Actually, his final years were an absolute masterclass in media manipulation. He totally leaned into his crazy persona. He even uploaded this wild parody video of himself uninstalling his own software while surrounded by women and pretending to snort bath salts. Then he officially runs for US president, not once, but twice. He rakes in millions running cryptocurrency pump and dump schemes on Twitter, and finally, after publicly bragging that he hadn't paid a dime in taxes for 8 years, he's forced to flee the IRS on a heavily armed yacht, claiming he's running his presidential campaign in exile. After sailing around the world like a fugitive pirate, the 75-year-old was finally tracked down and arrested in Spain in October of 2020. Fast forward to June of 2021, and the Spanish National Court approves his extradition back to America, where he was looking at spending the rest of his life in jail. And then, just hours after that ruling came down, John McAfee was found dead in his prison cell from an apparent suicide by hanging. Naturally, for a guy whose entire life was practically built on paranoia, his death just kicked off an absolute explosion of conspiracy theories. His wife publicly claimed there was no way he was suicidal. These theories were heavily fueled by his own past behavior, like a previous tweet and an actual tattoo he got claiming that if he ever died by suicide, it meant he had been whacked. Throw in a mysteriously deleted Instagram post showing the letter Q, and all these lingering rumors of a digital dead man's switch packed with damning government secrets that hasn't ever surfaced, and the whole mystery just deepens. Which brings us to the final lingering question here. Was he this misunderstood hero trying to expose elite corruption, or a deeply dangerous, drug-fueled madman who literally got away with murder? As we've seen throughout this explainer, the only undeniable truth is that he left behind a legacy of absolute, unfiltered chaos. It really just leaves you wondering exactly how much of his bizarre life was a meticulously calculated media stunt, and how much was the terrifying reality of a genius spiraling completely out of control. Definitely something to think about the next time that little antivirus pop-up appears on your screen. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.